This is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Council, anybody, or Lori, anything on the agenda?
I have no changes, Mayor.
Council?
I would like to remove item, let's see, gosh, where are we here? Item 7C under new business, the payment of legal fees. The city attorney, Robert Vos, who is most expert in that, is not here tonight. I'd like to move that to a next meeting when he is available.
Is there a second of that motion? No motion, no second?
I'll second the motion.
Discussion. I have no problems delaying that so long as the city manager agrees not to make any payments until such time as this discussion occurs.
That's fine.
So you'll hold payments until we can have this discussion? Mm-hmm. All right, then I withdraw my objection. Would you make the motion again, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda amended with item 7C removed.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, that item will be moved to the next council meeting or until Bob Vos is here. Lori, just for the record, is he going to be at the next one?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll move it to there. Next item, open forum. For those, in case you can't see, if you're watching live, we probably have 70 or 80 people here in support of Madison. And Mike Amundsen, would you come up, please? Speak for the group, state your name and the address for the record, please.
Mike Amundsen, 8070 81st Street, Victoria, Minnesota. So I have a couple handouts I want to give you guys before I start it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops, yours.
Thank you.
All right. Open one more.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Victoria City Council. My name is Mike Amundsen, and I've been a Victoria citizen all my life. I've seen the city grow significantly in the past 28 years. I'm standing before you today on behalf of someone that impacted this community in a positive manner. That person is Madison Mertz. In November 2016, Madison Mertz was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma multiforme at 7 years old. In the battle to fight this terrible illness, Madison endured different surgeries to remove tumors as well as continuous radiation treatments to combat the spread of the cancer. After 6 long, difficult, and painful months, shortly after her 8th birthday, Madison lost her battle to cancer on May 29, 2017. Of significant note, Madison's story caught the attention of the community very quickly, as you can see, and that progressed to the whole state of Minnesota. The Watermark development was heavily involved in the making the last 6 months of Madison's life the best and brightest it could be. The neighborhood Watermark inspired others and wasn't the only group involved with Madison's support. I've brought with me a list of different instances in which various groups showed their support for Madison that I'll share with you. With her impact on her community and neighborhood, I thought there could be a simple, respectful way to pay tribute to this beautiful, smart, and talented young girl in a meaningful way. So I will read off the things that were done. Victoria Elementary, the entire VES community, students and staff wore pink for Madison at School Spirit Week and for her birthday. There's pictures included, but I didn't bring them to the meeting. I can send them in an email if you'd like me to. The second graders also held Valentine's Day fundraiser to help show support for Madison. Friendship bracelets were sold for $1 each and delivered to recipients on Valentine's Day. At $1 each, they raised over $1,900. It was an incredible show of support. Every single student received a bracelet from at least one friend. Victoria community and neighbors. There was a fundraising event held at the School of Wise. The owners, who had never met the family before, hosted the event, solicited silent auction and donations. The event raised over $29,000 to offset her expense of medical treatments. The neighborhood of Watermark placed pink luminaries around the neighborhood at Christmas, and when Madison was getting released from the hospital stay. When they arrived home, a large group of Victoria supporters greeted the marches and sang Christmas carols. Pink ribbons and pink Christmas lights were placed all throughout Watermark and other Victoria neighborhoods to show support for Madison and the family during her battle, and now after her death. Cookbooks, hats, and accessories were created by a loving neighbor and sold at 100% profit for many local events. Classic Gymnastics had gymnastics across the country wear pink for Madison on her birthday and posted. It was overwhelming to see the number of supporters across the country. Classic Gymnastics also organized a birthday wish from Lori Hernandez, a U.S. gymnast. And Madison also received a video phone call from USA gymnast Simone Biles and presented Madison with an official Olympic leotard. And also there was media coverage. Fox 9, WCCO, KARE 11, and the Chanhassen Villager were involved. In her 8 years, Madison was a typically active young girl. She loved outside activities, and there's a small park in the middle of Watermark, which is located at the very center, which is very close to the Mertz's house. Actually, the sign is right outside of their home. And Madison was a very popular destination for her and her friends. I come here today requesting on behalf of thousands the City of Victoria to rename this park Madison Park in honor to the impact she made many citizens in the City of Victoria and the neighborhood of Watermark. I say on behalf of thousands because I started a petition in early June to gain interest and support. Since that time, the petition has gathered over 27,000 signatures from Victoria and various people across the world. With that momentum, I've decided to come forward to the Council with a request to the City of Victoria. After reviewing policies and consultation with past Council members and City staff, I understand that the Council has the power to rename a park in the City. I respectfully request that you consider this request and honor the wish of the Watermark Development and numerous other Victoria residents, as I just handed you the letter of HOA support. In my 28 years of living in Victoria, I can honestly say that this is the first time I've ever seen a huge community response and coming together for a positive movement for one resident. The amount of love and respect shown to Madison and her family from the community was definitely a unique, eye-opening, and fantastic experience. While Madison was just a little girl, her battle brought the neighborhood and her surrounding community together, and they showed their support, care, and love to Madison and her family. Many people like myself who didn't know the family or Madison joined the community-oriented movement and showed support in many different ways. The family, while never asking for support or from the community, was overwhelmed with support from the Victoria community. Madison did in a short 8 years what many of us cannot achieve in a lifetime. She brought thousands of people together in a positive and loving manner. This is the reason as to why I believe the park should be renamed. Many different events can bring the community together. Disasters, issues, complaints, and demands are typical. The event ultimately was unique because the basis was a tragic situation. The positive, unifying response was unique and showed the character of the city. I'm coming on behalf of the Watermark community, the Victoria community, and the 27,000 plus signees of the petition, with 2,600 of them being from Minnesota, and most importantly, the Mertz family, to perform one simple task. Let's give a beautiful park a meaningful, beautiful name. I urge the council to rename Watermark Park to Madison Park. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We typically don't discuss items in the open forum. But I want everybody to know what we will do is we will put this agenda item on a future council meeting so that the staff has time to put a report together, because there is a policy involved here, and so there's a process that we have to go through. And I'm just wanted to let everybody know that the council won't be discussing this specific issue later tonight, but we will in a future meeting, and we'll welcome you all back. Now, you're welcome to stay, but I know there's a lot of you that I don't want you to stay expecting that the council is going to discuss this when it won't be discussed tonight. So with that,
May I say something, please?
yes, go ahead.
I'm wondering why we cannot discuss it tonight. Given the audience that's here tonight, I'm prepared to make a motion in this regard. I think it is overwhelmingly positive, and it serves the interests of the community, and we should do this right now.
Matter of fact, I signed the petition. I don't have an issue with that, but I did talk with the city manager before the meeting. Staff has not done the staff work they need to do, and she requested that we delay this until they've had time to do the staff work. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, what due diligence still has to be done? What staff work are we talking about?
Generally, I would recommend that the council take a look at the policy that was adopted on park naming in 2009 and has been followed since then. Before making a recommendation, typically this would go through the Park and Rec Committee as well. But as always, I defer to the council on how you want to move forward this evening.
The council has final say in terms of these policies. I think we need to move forward with it. And with that, I will make a motion that we adopt. I cannot state the words as eloquently as you, so I move that we accept the recommendation from Mr. Amundson.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Thank you. There's a valid second. Since there's a valid motion on the floor, council discussion?
I think I understand there's a policy, and I also understand that those are guidelines, and we don't have to go chapter and verse all the time. And as a minimum, I think we owe it to the staff to do their report, but in the absence of some compelling reason not to, I'm fully in favor of moving forward.
Council, any other comments?
I'm normally a stickler for policy. So mea culpa, I'm sorry, there's no disrespect to the staff at all. But I think we're doing the right thing. We know we're going to approve it 2 weeks from now anyway.
Councilmember Gregory?
No, I would agree. I think this is a beautiful thing to see all you folks out here wearing pink in support of Madison. It's just a wonderful thing. I want to commend Mike for taking the lead on this. It's just a real neat thing. And there's not going to be any opposition up here, I'm sure. So I'm all in favor of moving forward as well.
Well, I thought this is a foregone conclusion. So instead of going through the process, I think we've got a consensus. All in favor of renaming the park, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The park will be renamed. And whoever said government can't move fast.
It's the pink.
I appreciate everybody being here. You're welcome to stay. And this will not be added to a future council meeting since I think the decision was just made. So, Lori, just as an administrative note, if there is something that we're required to do in another council meeting, please let us know and we'll go ahead and take care of that correctly later. With that, I have two other people that would like to speak in the open forum. First up, Judy Black. Judy?
There she comes.
Where is
She's
she?
coming. I can see her.
Yep.
Emotional. Okay. I know. I just want to thank everyone for passing that for her tonight. It means a lot to all of us.
Why don't you just give us a minute?
Yeah, give it a minute to settle down.
Okay, I think we can go.
Okay, because mine's not as much fun. Okay.
Name and address for the record,
Yeah.
please.
Judy Black, 1938 Woodstone Drive, Victoria. I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak again tonight, as I have at all the council meetings since April of this year, excluding the last meeting, which I did watch, and want to congratulate all of you for your professional, respectful, and collaborative behavior at the last 3 meetings. It was very refreshing to see everyone work together without conflict. I fear, though, that there may be, if not tonight, in the near future, a conflict that needs to be addressed, as an invoice is being presented to pay $9,102.16 in legal fees related to the defense of the open meeting law litigation appeal. And I would like to address that topic.
You know that topic's been moved to the next council meeting, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about some other stuff because
Okay.
I won't be
Yep.
here.
Go ahead.
Mr. Gillard, one of the citizens in the lawsuit, sent an email to Lori, our city manager, expressing his disappointment for her decision to present payment at this time and was hoping payment would be reserved until an advisory opinion from the Attorney General could be given, referring to the April 24th council meeting. I watched the meeting again very carefully. It was agreed that a letter to the Attorney General would be drafted with the help of the citizens and Mr. Kildow, which has recently been or is near ready to be sent. However, in that meeting, council members Vogt and Gregory both confirmed that the city manager's authority was not given alternate direction at that time. So as I understand it, there was no specific motion made that night that required her to hold payment until we heard from the Attorney General either way. And I'm sure Lori will be more than happy to explain her strategy when the time comes. Mr. Goulart also attached an expert declaration from Professor Richard W. Painter with several pages listing his very impressive qualifications regarding the situation, which I read. And I can't address all of his comments at this time, as I believe he was only directing his answers to specific questions and admitted to not having all the information specific to the attorney's fees in question. However, I do agree with his comment that, and I quote, "The appeal, however, was not necessarily in the interest of the city and its taxpayers. Financially backing the defendants may not have been in the public interest either," which translates to me that if the appeal had not been brought forward, there would have been no need to pay any legal fees for the accused out of the city funds. In essence, Mr. Painter agrees with me. To continue this litigation is not in the best interest of the city of Victoria and its taxpayers, and I am here asking you, Mayor Funk, and the other citizens again, to stop the appeal, accept Judge Kane's ruling, and let us, the people of Victoria, decide who represents us at the voting booths or make a deal. I seem to recall at the May 8, 2017 council meeting that Mr. Crowley indicated that there was an offer to end this, but the offer was refused. All I know is there were negotiation talks, but they fell through. Since we are all about transparency now, I'm asking that the negotiation specifics be made public so that we are made aware of what is actually happening, as I keep being told there's more to it than I'm aware of. I, and I'm sure the people of Victoria, would like to know as well. So what are we going to do here? Keep the appeal going, costing the people of Victoria more money, which it has and will, or set your differences aside, drop the appeal, and negotiate an agreement to end this once and for all? To say that this is all due to the council members committing open meeting law violations is like saying you had to burn the house down because they gave you the match, when all you had to do was blow it out. One of the other statements I noted by Mr. Painter was that if the cost of transparency becomes too high, voters or legislators will decide to dispense with open meeting laws. Is that really what you want? Please reconsider your course of action. We want peace. Thank you.
Thank you. John Iverson is next. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
John Iverson at 1032 Anthony Way. this document from Richard Painter should be required reading for everyone. And this, I believe, is probably about as unbiased and about as legal a document as one could find on the topic. We do, in fact, have some problems. And again, I would suggest that not only every citizen of Victoria would read this, but I would suggest that literally everyone in the country should read it at the same time. And all of this information to everything that I've read has not been previously printed. So I think the implication in this document is either malfeasance, incompetence, mismanagement, or worse. And I think the appellate court will find the truth in this, and I think it's bigger systemically than is probably recognized by many. I'm a 4-year resident of Victoria, and I followed this issue for the entire 4 years. I've read and heard most of the discussion. I think common sense would have determined what was right and what was wrong, and how people were voting, and in whose benefit they were voting at the same time. And to me, legal, okay, common sense, I think common sense would prevail. I think it's also very reasonable to state that we truly haven't been served well by our city attorney. We haven't been served well by the city manager, previous mayor, some of the city council members. We have also not been served well by our local print version of fake news. Where has anyone read anything about these items prior to this, prior to me reading this document? Why haven't we heard? Where's the honesty on this? The election of 2016, fortunately, gave us Mayor Tom Funk, who was elected to clean up the mess from the previous administration and make Victoria great again. I would suggest to everyone here to either get together, to work together, or get the heck out, because we've got an awful lot of work to do, and there's an awful lot of work that isn't getting done in the process. And I suspect there will be some resignations forthcoming. This is not always good, but truly necessary to move forward and get the work done. I suppose I could have used the term drain the swamp, but that's already been used. But I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council and city management. Thank you.
Mayor, may I make a comment, please?
No, we're not going to address, you don't have the floor. Is there anybody?
To the floor, sir?
No, we're not going to address comments from the floor. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council in the open forum? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Lori, is there anything that needs to come off? Any changes?
I have not had any items requested, Mayor.
Council, public, is there anybody that has anything that they want off the consent agenda?
I have nothing.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
So, all against say nay. 4 approvals, 1 abstention. The consent agenda is passed.
Mr. Mayor, could we have an explanation for the abstention? I thought that was required. I thought our attorney, Bob Vos, had.
I believe you're correct. Is that correct?
Mayor and Council, typically an abstention warrants an explanation.
Council member?
I disagree with the mayor's stance on the previous issue, and I I'm deciding I'm not going to vote on that.
Okay.
Here for transparency, just squashed it.
What does that have to do with the consent agenda?
Okay, let's move on. Next item is the visitor's presentation. Lori, are you going to introduce the Tour de Tonka?
Certainly, Mayor. Thank you. Tonight we have a representative of Tour de Tonka, which is an event that goes through our community each year, Jenny Boderka from the District 276 Community Education, to speak about Tour de Tonka.
Jenny, please state your name and your position for the record, please.
My name is Jenny Bedurka. I'm the coordinator for youth and adult programs with Minnetonka Community Ed.
Thank you.
And before I get started, I'm just going to pass out some fun Tour de Tonka sunglasses for you guys all to wear. And then my presentation will be a little different tonight. I'm going to show a video, and then I'll talk about the event with that.
Are these 3D glasses?
No, they're not. That's a good idea for next year.
I'd like the orange ones, please.
Awesome.
All right. Well, as I said, my name is Jenny Bedurka. Thank you, council members and mayor, for having us here this evening. Tour de Tonka will be in its 12th year this year, and we continue to appreciate the support of the city as part of that ride. If you could cue up a little video, kind of a recap of our event from last year. I'll share a little bit about last year's event and our upcoming event. So this here you see is the start line, kind of the arch going up, and most of our rides start out of here, and all of the rides end out of Minnetonka High School. In 2016, we had 3,540 riders and varying distances from 16 miles up to 100. Our 100-mile event was the most popular with 847 riders, followed closely behind by the 48-mile option that had 606 riders. So as you're kind of seeing here, people kind of start out in waves. It's a huge event that covers a lot of the West Metro, and we have over 527 volunteers. You'll see those in purple shirts throughout the video are our volunteers. So it takes a huge amount of volunteers to help direct riders at corners, to serve at our rest stops, to help with parking, various things. And we also work with over 106 different agencies, from police and fire to security guards, to be able to successfully keep a safe event. So a huge thank you to the City of Victoria and Lori and the fire department. Always been a great partner to help us be successful. Last year, as in all of the previous years, the City of Minnetonka had the highest participation of riders, but excited to share that Victoria was number 18 in cities last year, had 18 more riders than in 2015 for a total of 46 participants. Tour de Tonka really is an event for all ages. Our youngest rider was 5, and our oldest was 86. And a lot in between, but we really find our sweet spot of most participation is between the ages of 40 and 60, and it's about 60% men and 40% women. We've been sharing with our city councils sort of an interesting study that the University of Minnesota did about the economic impact of biking events on our community. And they learned that in 2015, $14.3 million was generated statewide in economic activity, and the average participant spent $121 a day on the event that they participated in. So it's a nice study to share the positive community impact of rides like Tour de Tonka as well. As we look at 2017, we have 7 rides again. So you could do 16 miles, 30 miles, 48, 57, 65, 75, or 100. And we'll be starting out at 3 locations. one Clear Springs Elementary, one the high school, and the other the Minnetonka Community Education Center. So between around 7:30, everyone will be getting started, and then they'll all finish at the high school throughout the day. We continue to support the ICA Food Shelf through our event, and we believe this year we'll pass the $50,000 mark of support for them. And we have 14 rest stops all throughout the community. Probably the closest to here is Pioneer Park in Chaska. And the 57 milers will be coming through Victoria this year. If you're interested in registering for the event or volunteering, tourdetonka.org is our website. And the fun sunglasses that you all are got tonight are a partnership between us and Subaru. They helped us to make these happen, and all volunteers and participants will receive them the day of Tour de Tonka, so those will be fun. And lastly, just want to thank our major sponsors who help us to make this event really affordable for participants and a really great community event. So Tonka Bay Marina, Maple Grove Cycling, Boyer Building Corporation, Subaru, Domino's, Park Dental, Bridgewater Bank, Cub Minnetonka, and Invicta. And then we also have two safety sponsors, which are Twin Cities Orthopedics and North Memorial Health. So we're really excited about another great event. Hopefully the weather will be as beautiful as it has been the last few years. So we hope to see you all there as a participant or a volunteer, or just cheering on the many riders that we hope to see that day. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Council?
What are the distances again?
Oh, sure. 16, 30, 48, 57, 65, 75, or 100.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Council, anyone else?
I have no comment. It's a great event, though.
No question,
Thank
just
you.
a comment. About, I think, 8 years ago when my daughter was in about 6th grade, she talked me into doing it, and it started raining from the minute
Oh,
we
no.
pushed off till we got done, and we could not have had more fun. It
Oh,
was
good.
a blast. It was a great family, good bonding time.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you, and we hope to
Highly
have you back
recommend
soon.
it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Lori, do you want to introduce the next one?
Just briefly, Mayor, tonight we will hear a final presentation on the feasibility report from the pool committee, and committee chair Julie Hesse will lead that presentation.
Julie Hesse, 8360 River Birch Court. In front of you, Council, thank you for having us tonight. The consultants are with me if we have any questions for them. You have a completed feasibility report that was started last August with the request for proposal. This doesn't have too many changes from the draft that you saw in June. There have been some changes to the drawings. We also took an extra effort to vet the profit and loss statements with some nationally accredited aquatic firms for accuracy. We assure you the numbers are accurate and conservative in nature. This facility will support its own operation and staff and add vitality to the recreation center as a whole. We've held 2 open houses and look forward to more public viewing at Volksfest. We have a booth for Volksfest and some classic carnates. The consulting team, as I said, is here. The first part of the project is now complete, finding out if we have a good plan for a pool in Victoria. I think we do. I want to be clear that the cost of the project is $6.2 million, not $14 million. That part of the proposal was the enclosing of the aquatic park. It's never been addressed as part of this first phase and was just listed out as the scope of the project for discussion and future use. Let me reiterate that it has never been suggested that the city use property taxes or bonds to pay for the construction of the aquatic park. It continues to be our intention that it be funded by a philanthropic community. The residents of this community want these amenities for their families and to better the community as a whole. I propose we begin a capital campaign with the leadership of a professional fundraising firm to raise the funds through corporate donations, grants, and private donations. Municipal projects like these have been very successful. The acquisition of a fundraising firm assures transparency and would put the project in the hands of a third party that would work with volunteers from the community to complete the capital campaign. This particular firm that I have a proposal for comes highly recommended and outlines a process that would take a little over a year unless the goal is reached in a shorter amount of time. The proposal I have outlines the process for a capital campaign, and request seed funds for the campaign would be about $25,500, just with this one proposal that I have. The city's made a good faith contribution in this project with the purchase of the feasibility study. I'm asking you tonight that you continue your support for this project by committing to build and run the aquatic center on the site suggested, the Victoria Recreation Center. The land acquisition in other municipal projects has provided the greatest obstacle. We are in the best position for success if the city will commit the site for this project. And I also ask that you provide $25,500 originating funds for the park fund to build a facility to launch the capital campaign. And questions?
Okay, thank you. Council, questions? Councilmember Gregory?
I'll just throw it out there. As far as this capital campaign goes, $6.2 million, that's a lot of money. I'd be interested to know if there's any one large donor out there that you're aware of that could make a good head start on it. As far as the pool, just to kind of back up a little bit, I think it would be a great addition to our community, and I think it was I think it was good money well spent, just to get an understanding of where a pool, how much it would cost to run it. I do believe that the numbers are fairly conservative. I've seen this presentation now 4 times, I think. But no, I do. I think these numbers are pretty good, and I think they're attainable. I think it can support itself, but 6.2 is a lot of money, and I have no idea how that could possibly ever happen.
And I will share these proposals with council as well, but these are experienced capital campaigns for municipal projects, aquatic and other facilities. So they have great success in raising that amount of money and double-digit millions for different municipalities for these types of facilities. So they have a well-thought-out plan in how you identify the philanthropic community and whether the environment will provide those kinds of funds. It's very similar to the feasibility study that we did. It line items out exactly where those things come. We're still looking at corporate grants. You remember that, and like you said, you've seen the proposal 4 times. This pool is going to provide physical therapy and a lot of other purposes besides recreational swimming for the community. There are medical facilities that are looking for time for physical therapy for their patients. There are a lot of other uses. So if we think about somebody coming forward and writing a check, while we would all happily take the check to build the pool tomorrow if someone wanted to give us the whole amount, I think we have to look at it as pieces of a puzzle that will come together. But I think the bottom line is the community can come together and raise this money to build this facility.
Is there a precedent? Or are you finished?
No, I'm finished. Thank you. Go ahead.
Is there a precedent where you could tell us 6 communities in the Midwest where they've done this and raised 6, 7, 8 million? This is definitely feasible?
Yes, there are examples of communities that have done this in the 5-state area as well as nationally and had success with this exact type of project. The company that I'm looking at and that I have the proposal from has experience with this exact type of project. So we certainly would vet out those like we did with the consultants and find the group or the fundraising professionals that have been successful in this scenario.
Okay. This is kind of an unrelated question.
Okay.
The 6.3 million, it's 6.3. My accountant thing makes me go to 6.3 instead of 6.2.
Sorry, 6.3. Okay.
Okay. Is there any land cost in here?
There are no land costs in there because the city currently owns the land that we are proposing to put the pool on.
Which points to the wisdom of the rec center having all that land and not using it for anything else. Thank you. But so the real cost is if we had to buy the land, we'd be looking at $7 plus million.
Exactly. And in these scenarios, it has proven to be the downfall in other communities. The land acquisition is the price that makes it too high, and the land acquisition has been the stumbling block. We're in a great scenario. We don't have that stumbling block. If the city is willing to put skin in the game, if you will, by saying, we have this area by the recreation center, then I think the philanthropic community will say, if the city is willing to commit to run it and follow the plan that you purchased in the feasibility study and put forth the land by the recreation center, I think we can come together as a community and do something great.
Councilmember Striegel.
So again, thank you for the hard work, and in the interest of full transparency, sister-in-law. So, I know I suppose it's been 4 years ago, we spent as a city council something in the neighborhood of $12,000 or $15,000 to do $1,000 to conduct a statistically significant citizen survey. What are the priorities? What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like? What would you like to see more of, less of, all of that? And I believe an indoor pool and an outdoor pool were in the top 5 on all of those where there were questions around that. And I think it's easy to say yes when there's no dollars attached and just, yep, that sounds nice. I'd like a pool too. And so it's balancing those things. I think that's what we're all wrestling with. But if I understand correctly, you're proposing a capital campaign for all of the construction costs, and that user fees from individuals as well as organizations will pay the operating costs. And I've heard a former city manager make the comment, pools eat money, so that's always in the back of my head. But other than the seed funds, it sounds like there is not an intent that this becomes subsidized in any way through general fund revenue. It'd be voluntary through user fees, et cetera.
You bring up a good point, and this study that we've just completed tonight and given to the council vets out all the concerns that the citizens have raised and the former city managers and all of the people that we've talked to in the last 3 or 4 years since we started talking about this. Do they eat money? Maybe back in 1970 and 1980, that could have been a fact. What we've found is that in the 2005-2006, the way they're run, what they're run with, has changed dramatically, and they don't take the amount of money that people often think they do to run. They're much more efficient, and so we've been able to say through vetting out every single line item in a profit and loss statement, they don't eat money. This won't eat money. It is feasible. And we've given you the worst case scenario, because you've heard the consultant say, if it isn't run correctly like any other business, will it be as successful as it could be? No. But the profit and loss statement you have in your hands is the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is still over $100,000 in the black its first operating year. So we've been able to make sure that any of those things that we asked about or any of the concerns we've addressed in how it'll be run.
So thank you. And continuing on that point, I've heard, but I guess I haven't seen it in writing, that the rec center as we know it today was always intended to be a multi-phase project, and the space that this pool is being proposed for was intended to be a pool in a future phase. Is that correct?
That's correct. When I first started this idea 3-4 years ago, I walked the property with the city council that sat in your chairs when the recreation center was built. And I listened to their vision, and I looked at their plan, and they said, we thought in the future the Lions would want to expand and the city would want a pool. Isn't it kind of ironic that the Lions are expanding and the city wants a pool? And they were great visionaries that worked really hard for the city, and their original plan was, let's leave the back of the recreational center open for future use. Now we're ready for that future use.
So, and again, going back to your presentation from last month, one of the things that I think is key is for it to be clear what it is and what it isn't, and how different segments of the city population could enjoy the use, benefit from its presence here. It's not just a splash pad or a place for the kids to go make noise in somebody else's presence during the summer, but competition, training, swimming lessons, water safety, therapy, all those different things. And the rec center itself, and I did some research on this, so this I can say with certainty, was built under the premise that all the funds that we collect from new property development go into core funds that are, by statute, required to be spent on capital, not maintenance, but capital of recreational facilities. And the idea being that we had a lot of ball fields and soccer fields, but that only served a fairly narrow segment of the population of Victoria. And we were a smaller city then, but with a reasonable vision that we were going to grow and looking forward, what would serve much wider segment of the population. So we've got people of all ages using the exercise facilities and the indoor running track and the hockey and all the many different, the gyms and all the different facilities there. And so to me, this is, the numbers have to make sense, and we have to really go through that. But this is another kind of chapter in that naturally evolving story. And to me, it's kind of the, put down the video controller, get off the sofa, go out and do something that a lot of times, is needed, but it's a lot more than that. So I look forward to, and it probably has to be at a future event, having that discussion of how do you set up the bank accounts and start collecting money, and if you don't reach your targets by what point in time, what do you do with the money, or what what happens then? Those are the pieces that I think we probably, especially our accountant types, want to really understand in greater depth. But again, thank you for the hard work and the commitment to bringing this to something tangible.
You're welcome. The open house provided some interesting feedback. Some of the visitors were of the video and couch age that had very, very good questions about a facility that they wanted. And they also pointed out that, again, so I can ride my bike here. We had to have had a dozen of the children in the community that came, and some brought their parents back the next day to say, see, that's what we want to do, and that would be great. So it was an opportunity to really talk with a lot of residents that have different purposes, some that live right surrounding the recreational center, back right up to it, absolutely thrilled and excited about the value of their property and what a great amenity being added so close to their house. So it was great to be able to talk to people about the different ways that they're going to use it.
Was there any negative feedback?
Yes, there were people that came with questions about, everybody says it's going to be on the tax rolls, everybody says the city's going to build it and not ask us, and just a lot of really, honestly, misinformation about the financing piece, good questions about that costs a lot to run. These things never make money. Some of the things that you all have asked me over the year that we've been working on this report, it was a great opportunity to talk about those concerns and address all of those concerns. And I think, by and large, everybody had all of their questions answered. And I asked people, if you didn't pay for this, because you said, for certain citizens said that they were never going to use it. And I said, if you don't pay for this with your taxes, if we come together as a community and build it, would you still oppose it? She said, no. Why would I?
I would recommend, if you have an opportunity, put together the pros, the cons as an FAQ kind of thing, and if you can put it up on the city website to kind of get, and the responses to, again, some of the misinformation that was out there, or, and if you've made any changes or corrections to the plan based on the input that you've got, I think that would, really help keep the community dialogue going.
Okay.
Councilmember Crowley?
I guess comments I'll group into two broad categories, and I look at them as risk points. And I had an article in the Victoria Gazette last week where I stated very clearly that I'm in favor of a pool, but that's one data point. The two risks I really see, one is the financing of the pool itself, and then the second is the operating, the operations of it and making sure that it's cash flow positive. I do think it can become a destination, and when I look at those two risks, maybe I should have stated more clearly, because I listed the different possibilities for paying for a pool, and one of those was going to the taxpayers. But if that is a requirement, I would want to go to the taxpayers in the form of a referendum. This is a nice to have, not a need to have. And for nice to haves, I would want the citizens to vote in favor of that if tax money was to ever be considered. My preference is to not do that, and to the extent that there is a way to finance this privately, I'd like to find a way to give you more leash and continue on and try to figure that out. From an operations standpoint, that's the second risk, is that this needs to be cash flow positive. We don't want to be in a situation like we were in previously with the rec center. We've just now gotten that back to cash flow positive, and I want to keep it that way. And so I'd want to have, the very clear message I heard from the consultant, and thank you for going through all that effort with them, was that you've got to approach this seriously as a business, and you must actively market this in order to make it be cash flow positive. And so I would want to see the plans from staff to make sure that that is in place. So I guess my response is, how do we move forward with this?
I think if you get a chance in this final study to look at the specific line items, the budget is not vague or broad by any stretch of the imagination. It goes right down to concession pricing and the amount of hours that it's open and how often a coffee cart would be on the deck of the pool. And it may reassure you in the due diligence that was done on the operating budget.
I guess I'm not questioning it at this point. I'm just saying those are risks that we have to make sure as we move forward that they are addressed. I know that they are part of the study. And so I guess what I'm looking for is there a measured way to take this forward? How do we cut this into 10 different pieces, and now let's take the first step, and based upon some trigger criteria that we agree upon, that we achieve at step one, then we get to go to step two. How do we put that together?
I would like tonight for the council to commit to the project, and I would like to bring back to council specific fundraising proposals that are lined out. The proposal that I have shows just that, Councilman Crowley, step by step, project by project, how the volunteers are organized, every single step, all the way through the capital campaign.
You have my support.
Thank you.
Okay,
One more comment, I'm sorry.
I have another comment, too.
the Councilmember Gregory, go ahead.
Okay, just, would there be a way, but I'm not ready to commit to this tonight, but would there be a way to invite this group, this fundraising group, to come and give a presentation on where he thinks the corporate money is going to come from, the individual, the big donors, just kind of an outline of, does he really think this is possible?
That's part of the capital campaign, is identifying those donors. That's not something that they would look at and identify prior to committing to the project.
Well, we're not looking for anything cut in stone, but just kind of a general idea from previous work that he's done.
Certainly the whole process, absolutely.
Regarding the capital campaign, I understand this correctly, the city would front the $25,000 up to you. So it's city money out of pocket. Is the contract that is likely to be signed, does that make the city on the hook for $25,500 and then it's gone? Or if we decide halfway through the capital campaign that this isn't working, can we abort? So that we're not on the hook for $25,000 if this doesn't follow through.
I believe you can write the contract, and it would depend on the different firms, but I believe you can write the contract in any way that council is comfortable with. There are cities, the other fees that these firms would collect would be part of the total of funds raised. $25,000 would be seed money, for lack of a better term. Several cities have written into their contracts, that money be part of the fees that are collected, and at the end of a successful capital campaign, recoup that original seed money. That would be up to council after presentation, I would assume.
Okay.
We're not being asked tonight to commit to spending funds, are we? We're just being asked tonight to accept the report?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
What does this accept the report mean? I mean, are we saying, let's get a pool? Or what are we,
Yeah,
what are we saying?
Thank you for the
But
feasibility study that we paid for. We'll take this into consideration.
Well, first of all, I'm for the pool, but I just want to know what we're doing here.
May I address that, Mayor?
Please do.
So typically, when the city council accepts a feasibility report, you're saying that, yes, this is an official study that was commissioned by the city and is now complete and has been accepted by the city council. We're aware of its existence. We don't know of any major flaws. We're not looking for any additional work to be done. We accept it as a complete report.
But it doesn't commit the council or the city to anything further.
Correct.
Got it. The Councilman Vogt, any other questions?
No.
Okay.
I had one, sorry, if I
Go
could,
ahead.
please, thank you. The 25.5 in seed money, I thought I heard you say it to build a facility to start the fundraising, and I was wondering specifically what that means.
No, it's to, it would be if the city went forward with a contract for a fundraising company, that would be the initial fee to begin the process of the capital campaign. So it's a fee for the capital campaign.
Got it, okay, so it's just the retainer for the fundraising company.
Exactly.
But that'll have to come back before the council at a
Exactly.
later time. All right. So my comments on the report, I'm not opposed to a pool in concept, but I have concerns about whether or not this will actually be profitable. I talked with a number of mayors, and unanimously they all expressed concerns. They've heard the stories too that these things, the projections look good, but the reality doesn't deliver.
Excuse me, Mayor, what cities would those be? Because there isn't a city in Minnesota that has an outdoor pool that's in the red at this time.
Correct. What I'm talking about is what I've spoken with other mayors about.
That do or do not have pools, just.
That they would not do these,
not.
right? And some of the issues they raised, which are some of my concerns that I think we have to look at, is the question that if we use city land, is the liability rest with the city? So if somebody gets hurt or drowns in the pool, what's the risk to the city? So, and I thought in the early one, I don't know if it's the same or if I didn't read it correctly, but I thought the liability insurance here would be on the city. Should this go forward?
This would be a municipal pool. This would belong to the city, very much like the Lions building the shelter and donating it back to the city.
We would be on the hook.
And so it has been vetted, the League of Minnesota insurance, yes.
So so I'm not opposed to the concept, but when I look at this and I compare this to the fact that we've got a bunch of road projects that are coming down in the future that we're going to have to fund, this all ties back to the county passing the recent transportation tax, the fact that we have lots of parks and trails, the Wasserman Park where we spent just short of $1 million. We've got parks and trails that we need to connect, and then there's water quality issues in the stormwater ponds and some of the lakes that are degrading. When I look at priorities for city funds, my take is that those three would have a higher priority. That said, you raised an interesting point that I think the council will discuss when it comes back in front. I don't think I would support putting any city funds into this, but if there's a way to do it such that the seed money would be guaranteed to come back to the city, I think I'd be able to consider that. So that's the only comments I had. Council, final comments? Is there anybody?
I guess a question related to your concerns, and that is, it's probably a question as much for Lori as anybody, or maybe Kelly, would this, in terms of prioritization, in the event that it did need some city funds backstop for whether it's construction or operating, whatever, would that be competing with these other projects for dollars? And again, I think of it as you get park and rec funds and everything else has its kind of bucket. And so are those the decisions that we would be making, is to prioritize those dollars against those different projects?
If I may, I think Julie would want me to say that the goal of the pool committee is that city tax dollars not be used to fund the project. If they were, the city council would have choices in front of them. Certainly, Park and Rec dedication dollars could be used to build a capital facility similar to the rec center. There are not currently surplus funds that are unprogrammed, but there are funds that have yet to be received that the council has not discussed specific priorities for those. Obviously, general fund dollars could be used for a project like this.
And those would compete then.
Correct. Yeah, I think it would depend on which source of funds that you're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
The Pools Committee's intent is to use park funds that their sole intention and creation was for facilities for a community in a park and recreation nature, not road funds, not general fund money. The money that was earmarked to build facilities for residents in the town under Park and Rec.
So, Julie, your operating pro forma, which you say is conservative, shows a gross profit of $100,000 per year, per month?
The first year is projected at $120,000,
Okay.
and it goes up from there.
So that would support debt. If you had to float a small bond of $1 to $2 million, that would support servicing that debt without going to the taxpayers.
It absolutely
If
would.
your numbers are true. But the history we have of the rec center is we were told all the same things, and the numbers didn't hold. So that's the trepidation we would have, is that your numbers have to be conservative because, that $120,000 would support some debt, and we still wouldn't have to go to the taxpayers. That would support $1 to $2 million of debt.
Right.
So
If we were to get at this time next year, I stood before you at this time last year asking you for the feasibility study to decide if pools cost too much and if they don't make money. We've answered those questions. If we get to that point after having a capital campaign, which I understand from my readings take approximately a year, then I would want to have the conversation if we just had a slight amount to get to the total dollars, including the repayment of the $25,000 if this council wanted it that way. But I wouldn't want to address it any sooner than that.
Right.
But absolutely, there's a lot of room in the pro forma to support its own debt if need be.
Okay, council, final comments, any? If not, can I have a motion to accept the feasibility report?
I move we accept the feasibility report.
Is there a second?
second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Next item, public hearing. Aaron, would you introduce this, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have a public hearing for a temporary noise permit. So a little bit of background about this process since it's not something we do all the time. Section 12-26 of the City Code speaks to the temporary noise permit, which allows the city the power and authority to review and recommend approval or denial of an application for a temporary noise permit. So what that permit does is that it allows an event to exceed the decibel reading that is listed in section 12-23 of the City Code, which is the receiving land use standards. So decibels probably don't mean a ton to a lot of people. So the 65 decibels that are allowable during the day is about if someone is vacuuming and you're about 3 meters away from them. That's the max noise that's allowable via the City Code during the day. And at night, it's 55 decibels, which is general noise at a large office. So just general day-to-day business at an office. The decibel levels are set by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and are part of our city code. Our city code also speaks to notification of a temporary noise permit. So from the property that might have the event, 350 feet around the property is notice of the event, just letting them know about what might be happening, as well as the public hearing, and welcoming them to join us if they would like. So a few specifics about the event. The event that the application is for is 6456 Smithtown Road. It will be a private event with 200 guests anticipated. A big question that staff had was parking. Parking is not permitted on Smithtown Road at any time, And the applicant and their team has worked with us to ensure that there will be valet parking available, and they've contacted surrounding property owners that have graciously offered up their property to provide some private parking, and they also encouraged carpooling at the time of invitation. The information has been reviewed by both the fire chief and the Carver County Sheriff's Office. Both are comfortable with the event, have the general information in case anything happens. And again, notice was provided to the surrounding property owners within 350 feet. It was roughly 10 residents. So moving forward tonight, we'll open up for discussion and questions, hold the public hearing, take public input, close the public hearing, have some additional discussion if needed, and then either approve or deny the temporary noise permit. There's no formal resolution. It's just a nod of head saying this event will be happening. The public generally knows about it. The property owner is also in the room tonight, so if you have specific questions about the event, I will likely defer to her if there's something that I'm not able to answer. Otherwise, I will open it up to questions, comments.
All right, thank you. At this point, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any comments from the public? One more time. Okay, council, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. The public hearing is now closed. At this point, council, is there any discussion on this? Hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the permit?
I'll make a motion. We approve the permit.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. Permit is approved. Next item, crosswalks. Kara, would you please introduce this?
I'm just going to pop up an aerial here. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This agenda item is really just for discussion purposes. Looking to get some preliminary feedback from the City Council about crosswalk locations within the city. This, interestingly enough, has been an interesting issue over the last number of years, particularly relating to county roads, but generally, the city does receive from time to time requests for crosswalks at various locations throughout the city. The most common one is to have a painted crosswalk on a street that's in the city's jurisdiction, whether it be on the way to a school or near a park or something of that nature. So those basic crosswalk requests are dealt with at a staff level and reviewed and addressed within our own process. But we do, from time to time, get requests for crosswalks on county roads. And I guess I'm happy to report that the county is in the process of developing a new crosswalk policy. For those of you who've been around for a while, you might recall that, as an example, there were many crosswalks painted along County Road 11 for years, from downtown out to the city limits. And the county came through and did a road project a number of years ago and removed a lot of those crosswalks, and there was some negative feedback to that. So they are moving towards a more formalized policy that would provide a framework for those requests to be reviewed against. That policy development, I just got a draft of it last week. The county board had recently reviewed it at a workshop and now are sharing it with all the cities in the county to get some feedback on that draft policy. So I think what will end up happening is we'll take a look at the crosswalks that we've been getting calls about to see how they might fit into the policy or not fit into the policy. I think will be our next step. But I did want to just talk about the locations that we've heard from people recently to make sure there aren't any that we should also be looking at or thinking about as we start to look at this policy. So a more recent one that I've received is phone calls from residents who live in the area of Watermark and County Road 43 and Gallery. So it sounds like there's a fair amount of pedestrian traffic that moves from this neighborhood up into Watermark. Even though there's not a complete trail system all the way to downtown, this is a fairly nice route to get downtown, to get to the regional trail system and make the way to downtown without having to go down County Road 11 or crossing 5. It sounds like there's some traffic from Woodstone too that either crosses over to the trail crossing over here or tries to make its way down to this intersection. So I have gotten a specific request to review this location. This, of course, is challenging here for pedestrians with the sharp curve and the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that would be why we've been hearing about that one. Then from north to south, the crosswalk by the church here is, in fact, painted. Some of us couldn't remember whether it was painted or not. Maybe didn't believe the Park and Rec director when she told me it was painted and had to go drive it myself. But that one is painted and signed. So we haven't received any requests for specific modifications to that one. But when you think about a draft crosswalk policy, would this be a circumstance where the crossing should involve something more than just signage and striping? So is the signage and striping adequate for the circumstance at the intersection? Then, of course, 43 and 11 and 18, these all 4 directions used to be striped. And then 86th Street and Deer Run and County Road 11, that intersection there. And then the last one that we hear a lot about is the Rolling Acres Road trail crossing. That one is considered particularly challenging because it's not currently, it doesn't currently have a striped crosswalk, but so today it doesn't, I don't think, does it? It's very light. It hasn't been restriped. The challenge here is, the trail users are supposed to stop, but then some cars stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk, and then we have rear-end crashes occurring at this location because of the confusion between people not wanting to stop at the crosswalk and stopping. So this is a pretty high-volume crossing that would be another one that we've heard should be looked at. So some of the things that are potential challenges with evaluating these things, depending on how complicated the county's policy is, what sort of warrant analysis might have to happen at any particular intersection. I did call a couple of consultants just to get some idea of what those things can sometimes cost, and I heard numbers anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 an intersection, which seemed like a whole heck of a lot of money to do that work. So down the line, we might be in a situation where if that vets out to be an actual cost, we might be in a situation where we need to decide how to budget for that study and how to prioritize those requests. But I think at this point, I'd just be looking for some head nods that there aren't any other hot button intersections that I've missed, and we'll start to look at those against the draft policy and then provide feedback to the county and or bring it back here for discussion once we've had a chance to look at their draft policy.
Quick question. Any idea when you said the county is updating their policy? Any idea when that'll be done?
They drafted it went through work session lately, within the last week or so, and they just are sending it out now to the cities for review. I didn't get a specific timeline for how quickly they're looking to have that adopted, but they'll give us the customary time we would need to review it.
And given these are all county roads, the county would do the work?
Well, their policy is also going to speak to the cost participation of what the city would need to pay for versus the county would need to pay for a crosswalk improvement.
So final question. Before the policy change, do you know what was done before? Was it a 50-50 split? Did they take care of it?
There haven't been any major pedestrian crossings established in the city. It's just been painting of crosswalks, and I think they've typically done the painting and the signing in the past.
Yeah, the signs were there too. Big
Yes.
signs, pedestrian crossing. It wasn't just painting.
Council?
May I?
Yep, please go ahead.
Kara, am I correct that state law is that automobiles have to stop for pedestrians? Do I have that right?
I can respond if you like.
Okay.
Tara.
I did clip the statute and put it in my staff report.
The way Liz explained it to us is when there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk, vehicles are required to yield, but not just when you see a pedestrian approaching.
So that's what I thought. I'm confused as to why there are not crosswalks there now, when there previously were. And I had a conversation with one of the commissioners, Carver County Commissioners, and was told that the crosswalks were removed because the vehicles were ignoring the crosswalks and they presented a liability risk to the county if an accident occurred. And for the life of me, I don't understand that logic. Furthermore, I frequently use a number of these crosswalks, and I state that they are crosswalks because where the lines were previously painted, they are in compliance with the American Disabilities Act, which requires that they have those little half-rounded domes. So if a person who is visually impaired is crossing at that point, they know that that's a crosswalk, regardless of whether there's a car coming or not. And so if there is a legal liability, we have crosswalks now that are marked in compliance with the ADA. That represents to me a larger liability than having to paint there. We need to slow the vehicles down. We need access to our trails and parks. Probably the best example that I've seen is, and I think Laura, you mentioned that there's one in Chanhassen, but I've experienced it in the bike trail as you cross 15 in Excelsior, going to Excelsior, and there's a nice little button that you push and lights light up and all the cars come to a stop when someone needs to cross. And I think we need some of those.
Yeah, and that's a definite plus with the policy that I've seen some framework to, is that they're looking to identify the criteria for when those would be allowed and who would pay for them and how that would work versus just this sort of, respond as they come in situation that I think has occurred historically.
And just, I guess, a final comment, in the last 3 weeks, I've had 3 incidents where I've crossed at Deer Run and County Road 11, and I've been in the crosswalk with 1 or 2 of my kids behind me, and cars are failing to stop and jamming on the brakes. And so that's unacceptable.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I was here when that reconstruction project or resurfacing project was done on County Road 11, and I found it odd that the crossings at all the corners were upgraded to include the curb cuts with the, make it easier so you didn't have to go off a curb, and also the ADA compliant, whatever those tactile pads are. But yet the signage and the stripes were removed. And I think about that time we had Lyndon Robgent speak to the council. He's the Carver County road engineer, and he was very somber about it. He said, a child was killed in one of my crosswalks. And what I learned from that experience is that crosswalks give people a false sense of security. They think they can step out in them and everybody understands their role and will abide their role and they're safe. And the reality is that's not true. And so I don't think just because it's hard means we should stop trying. But I do understand there is a very real, very potentially tragic downside to being more aggressive with crosswalks. And if enforcement isn't part of that, to really get the word out, I think, and I'm not thinking dollar liability, I'm thinking personal loss liability here. It gets really hard to demand it. But having said that, down at the Crooked Pint in Chaska, they also have one of those very, very visible crosswalks with flashing lights that makes it pretty hard to ignore, pretty hard to miss. And so I think it sounds like that is already a part of it. And I couldn't advocate any crossing of any kind of busier road without something much more than just a static sign and some stripes painted on the road. I mean, I personally, and my wife walking the dog out of the Deer Run entrance have had more than a few close calls, people swerving and going around into the turn lane to go past, and as you're walking past the car that did stop, you got to watch for the next guy that's just in a little bit more of a hurry. And so I think as much sense as it seems to make, we really need to be careful in what we do here.
Yeah, based on the research that I did leading up to tonight's agenda item, there is a reality of needing to have warrants in place for when we put these things in, from the perspective if they're on every single block, everybody's in a hurry, everybody's driving 50 miles an hour when they're supposed to be going 35. So trying to have criteria for when they are warranted, when there is the pedestrian use there, when there is a destination that you're trying to get to, so that, across the metro area, we don't have crosswalks on every major roadway. So I appreciate the fact that they're trying to put a policy together with some specific criteria and that weigh those different factors that we can then operate from versus just thin air.
Well, and I also learned, and I'm maybe a little embarrassed to say, from my daughters who were in driver's training at the time, that by state statute, every intersection is a crosswalk, period. Doesn't matter whether it's marked or not. It is a pedestrian right of crossing.
It's in the definition there in my...
Who knows that? Right?
Exactly.
By the way, those little things are called truncated domes.
They are.
I specifically looked that up, and then I forgot.
Truncated dogs?
Domes.
Domes.
Councilmember Volt.
Well, first of all, everybody remembers we did this before. We talked to the Carver County authorities at length and had a scary discussion. And it started with talking about the fact that we had crosswalks on some key busy intersections and they were eliminated. And I'm a walker, so you walking around here across the major roads is scary. Especially, I do the Deer Run 86th Street all the time, and I won't agree that it needs a crosswalk. And so I don't care, you got to put a crosswalk in there. And I was just astounded when they eliminated the crosswalk signs and the striping, and they did the same thing on 82nd. And we talked about so to me, I think this is the best thing that's happened in a while, and I don't know where it's going to go, and if the county's going to have such rigid criteria that we spend $5,000 and they tell us we can't have one. I hope that doesn't happen. But, this is sorely needed because drivers are not trained to respect pedestrians, and that's kind of a general statement. If you took 10 drivers, there might be one or two that really would watch a pedestrian. The rest of them actually get ticked off if they have to slow down too much for a pedestrian. And there's a lot of confusion that this quotation on statute, I don't think that is the exact quotation because there's some ambiguity as to when the pedestrian is supposed to be stepping off the curb and so on and so forth. There's judgment. But, the onus is on the driver to be careful, too. You can't just say they're stepping off the curb at the last minute, I'm going to run them over. There's human lives involved here. So I'm really for this, and I think we should do more. And, of course, we're treating the symptom and not the disease. And the disease is we got the cars coming through here way too fast, especially when you have Victoria Drive is gravel truck roll, and they're coming at an astounding speed sometimes, and they can't stop if they're loaded with gravel. So it's very, very scary. And so I know this is a tough problem, and it's complicated, but I think you have to attack it. We have to do something. And I don't care if it's 3,000 to 5,000 per intersection. I'd say we should maybe make sure we have all of them here, and we probably don't if you just do a little more checking. So I'm repeating myself, but this is a good thing.
Councilmember Gregory.
No, I agree. It is a good thing, and I'm anxious to see the county's report on how they want to move forward with these. Of the ones that you have outlined here, I think 3 of the 5 are speed limits of 45 and higher. Personally, I like to give the people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody purposely runs down anybody. It's just that we're not programmed to be looking out for pedestrians all the time, and it catches people off guard. And these just painted crosswalks give people that false sense of security, and it does create a dangerous situation. The fancy lighted things, I think those are definitely the wave of the future. I think
Very
when I
expensive.
vacation in Florida, I know they're expensive, but they're all over down there. Everybody's walking, and you see those lights flashing a long distance away, and you know you're going to be stopping it because there's a pedestrian right there. They push the button, and they're ready to go. So, again, just anxious to see the report, and hope we can move forward quickly on these.
Just a quick comment. I noticed that 3 of these are previously marked, and I don't want to set the wrong precedent of the city taking over responsibilities of what the county typically does. But given that we had 3 previously marked, I see in here it says 3,000 to 7,000 per location for engineering. Can we just simply go out for a couple $100 and repaint those crosswalks?
They're not our roads, so we can't.
So we can't.
We can, but
Okay.
no.
You could, but I can't recommend that.
Midnight painting? No.
The signs help.
kidding.
Too. They're expensive.
All right. All right. Well, that answered that question. Council, any other comments?
One quick question. County Road 43, and you pointed out the sharp curve and the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. What are the long-term speed limit expectations for that road?
I'll have to go back and look in the plan for whether that is in the 20-year plan is needing to be upgraded. I have to go back and look.
Church Lake Road 43 down by where the
45
watermark, that's
It might be 50, but
the watermark gallery.
yeah,
crossing there.
I haven't looked at that road in a while for what the long range plans are. I can look that up and let you know.
Thank you.
Council, any final comments? All right. We don't have a motion on this. We can, is that correct, Kara? It was
Correct.
just information?
Just needed feedback. Thank you.
All right. Let's move to 7B. Kelly?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Later at tonight's meeting, the City Council will be considering a construction bid for the 2017 street reclaim and utility improvements. So part of the financing plan for that project is to issue bonds that would be repaid from a debt service levy and special assessments from benefiting property owners. To talk about the bonds, we have Tammy Amdahl from Northland Securities, so I will turn it over to Tammy.
Please state your name and position for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I am Tammy Amdahl with Northland Securities. Northland Securities is located in Minneapolis, and we are serving as advisor to the city on the proposed sale of these bonds. You had a very detailed finance plan in your council packet. I won't walk through it. I will be very brief and touch on a few highlights, and then happy to answer any questions that you may have, Mr. Mayor or council members. As Kelly introduced, you are considering the issuance of general obligation bonds to finance a portion of the 2017 street improvement projects. You are pledging taxes and the special assessments that you will collect from those projects to these bonds. The estimated amount is approximately $1.2 million. Given current market conditions today, we would estimate the average coupon on the bonds to be 2.4%. These bonds will be sold on August 14th. The final coupon and true interest cost will depend on market conditions on that morning. A few other things that I would like to highlight. We are recommending that the city seek a rating on these bonds. The city currently holds a rating from Standard & Poor's, a AA+. That is one notch below their highest rating of AAA. It is a very sound rating on your bonds, and we would expect that to be affirmed through this process. And Kelly will be going through that with me as well. This will be a public sale that morning on August 14th. Northland will take bids on these bonds, and that evening you will consider a resolution awarding the sale of bonds. Mr. Mayor, I would be happy to answer any questions that you or the council may have.
Thank you. Councilmember Corley, any questions?
No, sir.
Councilmember Striegel?
Thank you. The 2.4% rate that you're projecting, how does that compare to our most recent bond sale? And kind of what's your projection and how's your crystal ball?
The most recent one from 2016, I don't have the exact, but I can tell you this rate is higher than what that would have been at those market conditions. Rates have risen since that period. Last year, you actually sold at not close to the bottom of what rates were, so that would have been in November of 2016.
I think we were at 1.8% true interest cost.
Thank you. So it's different market. We would expect this approximate rate to hold, but again, we won't know until that morning, depending on where market conditions are.
I think it's still very, very cheap money.
It is. It is still historically low rates. It's just that when you sold last November, you were at the bottom of the market at that time. So you got very favorable results on that refunding.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Councilmember Vogt?
No comments. I think everything is in order.
Councilmember Gregory?
I have nothing.
And I have nothing. So at this point, can we get the resolution up on the screen, please? And if I could ask a council member to make the resolution?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to approve the resolution providing for the competitive negotiation sale of 1.225 million general obligation improvement bonds, Series 2017A.
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay, for those that joined us late, item 7C, which is a contentious issue and a lot of legal questions, and since our regular city attorney is not here, that has been moved to 24 July. Moving on to the next item, unfinished business, final plat, Waterford Landing. Aaron, would you please go ahead?
Sure, thank you. Tonight we have the final plat for Waterford Landing. A little bit of information. The sketch plat was reviewed by the City Council back on September 6th, 2016. Preliminary plat was approved on January 23rd, 2017, and here we are tonight considering the final plat. A bit of a reminder of the property. It's outlined here in red in the left picture. So the roads for orientation, access is off Highway 7 here. And then this is Rolling Acres Road. So Schutz Lake below the property for Waterford Landing. The photo on the right is the project with the 32 villa lots with the Robust Homeowners Association superimposed on top. Some information about the property. Today it is guided at our low density, which is 1.5 to 5.9 units per acre. The acreage of developable land on the property is 17.55 acres. It's roughly about 20 acres, but there are some wetlands on the property. And with the 32 villa properties, the proposed development density is 2.41 units per acre. So this might get a little bit confusing. It's flipped at this point. So keep orientation of Highway 7 here, Schutz Lake here. The final plat that was submitted from the development team is really similar to the preliminary plat. Outlot A, which is here, will be maintained by the city. It has 2 wetlands within the outlot, and it also has the stormwater management facilities here. So outlot A will be deeded to the city. Outlot C, which is here, has a wetland buffer in it, so the city will also maintain that outlot. As part of Outlot C, the project will construct a new lift station. So the properties to the east of the proposed property are served by the lift station. The additional 32 lots went over capacity for that lift station. So as part of this project, the lift station will be upgraded to serve the properties to the east, as well as the 32 units proposed tonight. And then Outlot B had quite a bit of discussion throughout the entire process with some really engaged homeowners on Schutz Lake, which was excellent. Outlot B includes a park area near the lake, and it also includes the lake access that gives the property owners within Waterford Landing the riparian rights to be able to use the lake. In the PUD and the conditional use permit that were approved with the preliminary plat, it was noted that there would be 1 dock and 1 pontoon boat for the development to use via the access here. Moving on to the final landscape plan, again, it's really similar to what we saw at the time of preliminary plat. There's quite a bit of significant buffering at the entrance of the development on Highway 7 to prevent both noise and to give a good entrance, just with some mature trees in a few years when they continue. There's also quite a few trees on the property today, and they will be remaining. So generally on the outside of the property, and the development team has worked pretty hard to make sure that some of the mature trees that are there won't be compromised and can stay on the property. There's also significant buffering here along Outlot C, which gives some buffering to the property owners that are currently existing to the east, so to give them a buffer to the new development. A few photos of the proposed development provided by Charles Cudd, who will be the builder. And moving into the plat conditions. So if you recall, the developer and homeowners on Schutz Lake today have been working really closely together to come to a point where both groups feel like they have made a few compromises but are at a place where they feel comfortable. So to run through the plat conditions, the first is a development agreement, which is pretty standard for the city. All developments have them. Number 2 enforces the standards that were set at the time of the PUD. So the information, including that there will be one pontoon boat, one dock, is included with number 2. It also speaks to the type of fertilizers that they'll need to use on the HOA properties and the maintenance of the homeowners association. Condition 3, again, is pretty standard, so to move through all permitting processes that are required with development. 4 speaks to the approval of MnDOT. So a significant change from the time of preliminary plat to final plat is that the development will have a full access. So at the time of preliminary plat, it was proposed at 2/3. MnDOT is comfortable moving forward with a full access, meaning you can turn right or left, both in and out of the development. So there will be a turn lane construction project that will be part of this project that gives you acceleration room when you're turning left out of the development, since you're turning onto Highway 7, to give you some room to get up to a higher speed to ensure safety. Condition 5, again, pretty standard to the development, and that's the final engineered plans and specifications. They come with all developments. 6 is the deeding of Outlot A, which has the wetlands and the storm water management facilities, and Outlot C, which has both the lift station, which we will maintain, as well as the buffers from the wetland to the east. 7 speaks to Outlot B, which speaks to the robust homeowners association that we've heard about from the development team. So speaking to the maintenance of most of the property within the development, as well as the area where there's a proposed park down by the water, as well as the boat landing. Number 8 is that a draft set of covenants and association bylaws will be provided to the city. They were part of the packet tonight, so if you had time to review them. That is a draft at this point, but at the time of recording of the final plat, the covenants will be recorded as well. Condition 9 speaks to the restriction that there will be one pontoon boat. So in the early stages, the development team came in with 2. They met with the residents along Schutz Lake, and they both came to a compromise of having one pontoon boat available strictly for residents of the development to rent out and use. 10 speaks to the landscaping plan that we went over, the buffering, as well as the trees that are required for each lot. 11 is the parkland dedication. So the development team has chosen the fee in lieu of land dedication to the equivalent of $85,333. 9 speaks again to that relationship that was built between the development team and residents. There are some sensitive bluff areas within the property, so 9 speaks that there will be no encroachment into the bluff or the bluff impact zones. And 10, again, speaks to installing natural vegetation buffers, plantings adjacent to the rear yards, so things that are covered under a landscape ordinance, but the developer will be held to complete through this process. Members from the development team are here tonight if you have specific questions for them. Otherwise, I will open it up for discussion.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Councilmember Crowley, questions?
No, sir.
Councilmember Striegel?
So just a comment. First, I think this is trivial housekeeping, but in terms of the actual documentation, should the second 9 and 10 be 12 and 13, or?
Oh, yes, it absolutely should.
Just, and again, just for clarity of
Sure,
documentation.
thank you.
Is that new math?
No, not. The maintenance that the city will be responsible for on Outlot A, what does that entail?
So, in general, when there's a wetland within a development, the city does take it within an outlot. So, Ann could probably speak to the work that Public Works does, but just general maintenance. If
It's not going to be like mowed regularly or anything.
No.
It's a natural area, and it's just if the dredging or some kind of.
Trash removal.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
With wetlands, we don't dredge those or do anything. They're just, it's protective in nature by having them on city-owned outlots. We ensure that they aren't getting filled or a lot of times we'll get calls if people start trying to fill into them or dump yard waste into them. And with us having full ownership over that land, it's much easier to enforce protection of the wetland.
Thank you. My recollection from whenever we first saw this is that the piece of property is very heavily treed, with very old growth trees around the perimeter, but the center area where most of the construction will occur was relatively open. And so I think that's a really nice, so it sounds like, can you comment at all on what level of tree removal? I know they said they minimize it, but can
Sure.
you comment on that at all?
So you're correct. I've been on the property a few times. It's a really lovely property. I would probably say it's closely mirrors like a meadow. It's mostly tall grasses at this point. There was some buckthorn removal that took place, but generally the center of the property doesn't have significant trees. You can see the existing driveway today, which is here, and it's quite long down the center of the property. The general configuration of the road will stay in that same location. So to minimize the amount of mature trees that will be taken out, I don't know the exact number, but generally we're trying to keep the mature trees on the perimeter of the property.
Will there be an inventory and any tree replacement as part of
Yep,
the
so that's
project?
included in the
Standard-
final plat.
Standard stuff, okay. And then last question is, the turn lane construction, who pays for that?
Rick, do you want to speak to it?
Rick Denman, Charles Cud.
Rick, if you wouldn't mind, name and position for the record.
Yeah, Rick Denman, owner of the Charles Cud Company, partner there. As part of the cost, the entire cost is borne by us. There's no cost that I know of that the city has on that construction.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all, thank you.
Councilmember Vogt?
Just a couple of questions. I'm just curious as to why MnDOT eased up on the restrictions. That's a good thing for the homeowners, but that's a complete turnaround from the first time this property came up for development was 2007, and they were very...
It was going to be a right turn only, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very tough. So do you have something to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I was, actually, we fully intended that it would be a 2/3, which is what they approved before. When we got there and they analyzed the space and how we would create it, they had a median that was actually going to be constructed in the middle of Highway 7, a concrete median.
Yeah.
And they thought that would actually create way more problems than widening that lane and being able to offer a right and left.
Okay.
So, I mean, they have other turn lanes that under the same condition, and they felt this was a much better solution. But they looked at it a long time, and they came up with this as the best solution.
That's wonderful. You're on the hook for that lane then?
Yes.
Okay, good for you.
It'll be a toll lane.
Do you want to pay for any other roads?
This project is an example of what a project should look like, the way it proceeded and the residents handled themselves. It's just been wonderful working with this project.
Is it all?
That's all.
Councilmember Gregory?
I have nothing really other than I'm curious on how is the level of interest in the sales going?
Well, kind of remarkably, and it surprised us too, I think we have about 15 or 16 of the 32 lots with people put them on hold. They actually have written purchase agreements contingent on the final lift going in. So obviously we have a ways to go on that, but really fantastic. I think the opportunity to share some of that lake access it just isn't available for what we're offering a lot of those people. So I think it really was a plus.
Congratulations.
Yep, thank you. But 2 quick questions. Aaron, my assumption is, and I just want to confirm this, that you or Ben or somebody on the staff, when the council initially approved this, there were a number of conditions. You guys go through and look at the HOA association agreement, the developer agreement. You guys ensure that those various requirements are being met and included in those legal documents. Is that correct?
Sure. So we can use the conditional use permit to enforce the covenants. They're more of a standalone document. We don't have a ton of say as to what exactly those can say. We can have language in our conditional use permit, though, that speaks to some specifics that are required to be in the covenants.
So if there ever was a disconnect, we would still be able to enforce it?
Correct. And we are also, we will have a copy of the covenants in our office, just so if someone has a question that we don't know the exact answer based off of our PUD, we can refer to it at least. We can enforce some of the information, but we'll at least have the knowledge and the information available to us.
Thank you. One other final question. I heard you say earlier that the developer and the residents have all worked out any issues. I know I saw some late emails with some questions. I didn't have time to go through them in depth. Are there any remaining issues or questions that the residents have?
I think there might be a resident here tonight. She may have left. Okay.
Rick, we're good? Okay, so there's no remaining issues then?
Lori and I walked through some of the information with both the city attorney as well as Rick. Some of the requests are coming from a really good place, trying to keep the invasive species at bay. There are some requirements by state law stating that if you do have a boat that is in a lake that's infected with an invasive species, you do need to clean it before transporting it. But it would be difficult to enforce how someone is using their personal canoe if they use it on Schuetz Lake and then take it up to the boundary waters and bring it back to Schuetz Lake. So we understand some of the concerns, but enforcement of it would be difficult. And through the nature of a PUD, some of the things that were suggested don't go along with the subdivision of land. They're really great ideas that would protect the lake, but something that we likely can't enforce.
Got it. Thank you. Council, any final comments?
Well, yes, please.
Go ahead.
So the comment about the canoes and then the single dock and pontoon. And so I think the agreement was really reflecting powerboat use, but can any and all individuals have canoes and or kayaks or something non-powered that can then be stored or maintained on that piece of parkland down there at the southwest corner?
So personalized, non-motorized watercraft, they may have it on Schuetz Lake. So if someone has a canoe, they can pull it out of their garage and bring it down.
Are they allowed to store it down there overnight, long-term, during the season at the shore by that park area?
I know there was a gazebo as part of the plans. I'm not sure if a storage building is part of the final plat.
Well, the idea is that we would have a canoe rack that would hold a certain number of canoes. I guess that's something we could address in the homeowners association, the number of, say a kayak and a canoe or some reasonable number. We were kind of thinking if somebody had a canoe, they may keep it up in their garage rather than down there, but.
Okay, and I don't know if it's necessarily an alert. It was more a curiosity, but I think, with 32 homes, if everybody had one or two, it could be pretty
cluttered.
Thank you.
From a practical manner, I don't think most of the residents will be, I don't know, it could happen, but.
Because I think that's a fairly significant hill to hike up and down, right?
It
It'd be great training for like a Boundary Waters trip.
Okay. Any final comments, Council? Aaron, can we get the resolution up on the screen, please? Can I ask one of the council members to make the motion?
I move we approve resolution Final plat for Waterford Landing is submitted by Casco Ventures LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. The next item. Thank you. Kara, is this one yours?
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Surely. Okay, so tonight we are asking you to consider award of the 2017 street and utility contract. So bids were opened and received on June 29th, 2017 from the 4 bidders listed here on my staff report. The low bidder was from OMG Midwest Inc., DBA Chard, formerly known to all of us as Chard. City staff is recommending award to the low bidder for both their base bid and alternate 1 plus alternate 3. So we did have a couple of different alternates with the bid package. Alternate 1 included the mill and overlay of Bavaria Road from 86th Street to County Road 11. This was originally in the long-term street maintenance plan for overlay in 2018, but if any of you have had the pleasure of driving that road recently, it's in pretty poor condition. So we recommend moving that maintenance up to this year, so we did include it with our bid package for bidding. And then alternate 3 involves the replacement of all the water gate valves throughout the project limits. We did it as an alternate. Alternate 2 involved a repair to the gate valves. Alternate 3 was a replacement. We wanted to see which was more cost effective, and it just made a lot more sense to replace them based on how close the bids came in. So staff is recommending award of the contract to OMG Midwest Inc. DBA Chard. The total project cost then, so these were the bid results, the total project cost, which would include engineering design and construction administration, geotechnical services, fiscal administration costs, is about $1.58 million. About, just to give you a sense of what the breakdown of the type of work involved, $21,000 of the costs relate to sanitary sewer repairs that we're doing to the sewer system. Before we complete an upgrade to a road, we want to make sure the sewer's in good shape. $74,000 in water system repairs, which includes those gate valve repairs. So all of our old water system have bolts on our gate valves that are subject to corrosion, and so that ends up being a source of water main leaks, so we do want to get those corrected when we're working in an area. Trail improvements, as a reminder, there is a trail in Swiss Mountain that's maintained by the city that the surface is in poor condition, so while we have a paver in the area, we'll be removing that surface and putting down a new one. Bavaria Road, about $206,000. That's for that mill and overlay. That is funded from the long-term street maintenance fund, and then that leaves a remainder of about $1.22 million in street and storm sewer costs, 50% of which are assessed. And let's see what else. We had a couple of open houses during the design phase, the second of which was held on June 15th. There wasn't tremendous turnout at either of those open houses, which tends to be the case when we get to this stage of the project. And with that, I think that is all, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Council, any questions?
Curious on the bids from the base bid, from the alternate bid on OMG. The difference is only, what, 44,000?
Where'd I go?
But on here it said the mill and overlay on Bavaria was 200,000. Is that right?
That's correct. So that includes an allocation of all of the costs. But my math is correct, so where's the difference? I'd have to pull up my spreadsheet. But the $200,000 does include all the engineering costs, the 5% contingency, but those two numbers do seem fairly close. So I'm going to just pull up the actual bid here quick to make sure that I don't have a reporting error. but I can answer questions while I look that.
While you're doing that, I just have one question. I know we approved the development along that part of Bavaria, right? Does it make any sense to delay that piece until after that development goes in? Does it make any difference?
I certainly will be chatting with the developer about the coordination of that work to see what their schedule is, but the road's in such poor condition that if they're on a schedule where they aren't going to be doing that turn lane work until next year, I don't think we can wait, given the condition of the roadway.
Okay,
so
thank you.
they'll have to match into our new paved surface.
Councilmember Striegel?
So I always think of Bavaria/Rolling Acres as a county road.
It's city south of 82nd Street. So
Okay.
between 86th and County Road 18, it's a city street.
82nd is the same as 18?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so it is noted as a CSAH road. Are we using any CSAH dollars for this project?
So south of 82nd Street, it's a municipal state aid street, not a county state aid street. So we would have the ability to contemplate the idea of using municipal dollars for a project. But at that point, the point you would do that would be when we would be reconstructing the road, at which point we're meeting state aid standards with the improvements. So a portion of our state aid dollars do get allocated to us as cash for the purposes of maintenance, and those do get deposited into the general fund and are used for road maintenance items.
So mill and overlay is not considered maintenance?
It is, but I mean, we're kind of operating off of the same pool of money from the long-term street I mean, you could take the 25% you get in state aid dollars and put it into the long-term street maintenance fund, but we do end up using it for seal coat projects.
Dollars are fungible, and away we go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others?
There's
Councilmember
one
Vogt?
question. We're going to be putting the sewer in this stretch of road, moving it from the west side of Bavaria to the east side for the new development. So that will be done prior to this work?
Well, that's again what I'll note that I'll be talking with the developer about in terms of coordination of work to see whether there's any reason to wait. But their sewer is being bored outside of the paved surface, so
Okay.
I don't anticipate it being an issue. Certainly, if after we chat with the developer, it makes sense to do this later in the window of the project, that's something we can certainly consider working with the contractor on.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, nothing.
Can we get the resolution up on the screen, please?
You got it.
Council members?
I'll make a motion to accept the bids and awarding of a contract for the 2017 street and drainage improvements related to the stretch of road between Bavaria between 82nd and County Road 18.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Okay, next item, report to the city manager. Lori?
Just a few brief items, Mayor, mostly on events. As I say every meeting, summer is a great time to be a Victoria resident, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that we have a classic car night coming up again this Wednesday, July 12th. Those run from 5 to 8. We also have a concert in the park featuring a group called Stimulus Package. Next Friday night, we're having a movie in the park and family fun night. That's going to start at 7 o'clock. And we've got a bounce house and a face painting, and the Kona Shaved Ice Truck will be there. So we're expecting that to be a nice time. It is rain or shine. If we have bad weather, we'll move over to the rec center for that one. And Volksfest is coming up, so that's going to be in August. It's August 18th and 19th. And this one is, of course, an invitation for everyone to join us, but it's also a little bit of a plea for sponsorship. We continue to be looking for a sponsor for the fireworks. Historically, that event costs about $5,000 to put on. The Victoria Business Association has always taken the responsibility for that fundraising. As we know, one of our chief cheerleaders and fundraisers, Randy Miller, passed away earlier this year. And everybody's doing a great job of picking up that ball and running with it. It's going to be a great event. But if we want to have fireworks, we will need to have a sponsor step up relatively soon for that. So if you have any contacts that you can pass on to Laura O'Neill at the Victoria Business Association, or if there's a business owner or potential sponsor watching, that would be fantastic. And briefly, on a little bit of a somber note, I just wanted to note that today is the second anniversary of Lexi Kretsch's passing, daughter of our longtime city clerk, Jenny Kretsch. And I know Jenny keeps in touch with many folks at the city, and we just wanted to publicly say that we're thinking about her today and every day. Thank you.
Bob, you look a little different. Any report?
No, Mayor.
Councilmember Crowley?
Thank you. Each issue of the Victoria Gazette, there are questions that come from the editor, and it happened to get the nod this time for those questions. And there was one more thing I wanted to say, but I felt it was probably best to say it in person. And that is, one of the questions is about the litigation, and I just wanted to respond back that during this litigation, it's been most welcome to receive the many compliments that I have received from citizens as I walk down the street thanking me for my service. And I just wanted to express my thanks for the continued support. Thank you.
Councilmember Striegel?
No report.
Councilmember Vogt?
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Gregory?
Nothing to report.
I have nothing. So at this point, can I have I'll make the motion that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.